program. But, one of the areas that we talk about the Unit 6 MCR program. We're now into Unit 3. We'll start Unit 4 on February 1st of next year, having been executed safely with quality, on time, and on budget. And the key ingredient to enable that is a combination of planning and preparation, effective teamwork, and often what we call cross-functional teamwork. And one of the key ingredients to enable that to happen successfully is training. And I know we sometimes get quite used to the day to day, and we get used to sort of what we have in this area. But the MCR training facility that we have here in the municipality of Kincardine, it's actually the largest nuclear training center in Canada that is not on a nuclear site. It's in the community. It served us very well. And excuse me. And for example, today we have people that are training in that training center to be able to rotate back to site. And the municipality deserves a lot of credit for that. We announced we were going to commence MCRs starting in 2020, coming out of a transaction in 2015. And I think the ability of the municipality and Bruce Power to work together to get that in service, obviously it's great to have that economic activity, that tax base here in the community. But I can tell you that it's also been absolutely critical to our major component replacement program. That's the right slide. I don't want to, you can read the slide in terms of the other areas of collaboration, but I can tell you all of them in their own right are very important. I'm now going to shift to the slide that says regional. Next one. Oh, these maybe should be in a different order. So I may be actually playing a cruel trick on you. Maybe my order is different than yours, so that's okay. So the two other regional initiatives that I do want to talk about is the Clean Energy Frontier program. So this is the program that was really focused on bringing suppliers here to the community. And very recently, over the last year, we've recalibrated that program. It's fully funded through the Nuclear Innovation Institute. And that is a program now, and I appreciate many members of council and staff that attended our annual summit a number of weeks ago. And we've retooled the Clean Energy Frontier program to be focused on consolidating together all of our regional asks across Grey, Bruce, and Huron counties. So we have a consistent voice at the provincial and federal level around whether it's services funding, infrastructure funding, and we come together as a region and indicate that, yes, there's a lot of investment happening here, but again, back to that economic activity that we continue to generate, that we need to paint a broader picture in terms of the opportunity for the region and also the support we need as a result of that economic activity. We appreciate the municipality of Kincardine being part of the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition. The purpose of this is to drive more isotope processing closer to our site. Tomorrow, we will celebrate 2 years of reliable operation of a short-lived isotope on Unit 7. It's the first time that has been done anywhere in the world. We've never missed a shipment. Sorry, I have a bit of that cold going around. And we're now celebrating 2 years of that. But what's most important is just last week, we announced the commissioning of the doubling of that system. So on an average day, we can produce actually over the global demand for lutetium-177 as an example. So we've built a massive capacity, a large degree of reliability, so we can send the world market for radioisotopes a strong message that if they develop the drugs and they need the supply, that we can provide it. The one other element I would like to share with council is Bruce Power has advanced a $3 million investment in 2025, and Bruce Power is committed in 2025 to investing $3 million to move more isotope processing infrastructure here to either our site or in the municipality of Kincardine because of its proximity to Bruce B. And this will essentially be to do further processing, improving the efficiency of getting that isotope from the reactor. Oh, thanks a million, John. Appreciate it. Don't want to be choking up here. From the reactor to the place in Germany that does the final pharmaceutical processing. And the reason why that is so important is when an isotope comes out of a reactor, given its half-life, It's really like an ice cube. And I always like to say you have to get it from the reactor and into a patient's glass. Excuse the pun. John's timing is perfect. For treatment. And the more steps that there are in the process that are outside of that, from the production to the radiopharmaceutical processing, actually wastes a lot of that valuable isotope. So we look forward to moving, in particular, what we call decanning. So further processing of the target once it comes out of the reactor right here locally. And that is going to be incredibly exciting. We don't know exactly the way we're going to deploy it, but we do know we're going to be investing $3 million into that next year. The two other things I do want to cover before I wrap up and then open up for questions is I do want to talk about the work that's been underway between Kincardine as our host municipality and Bruce Power in terms of planning for the long term and supporting capacity. So as everybody knows, advancing Bruce C is a multi-year process. It's a multi-stage gate process. We haven't made a decision to build Bruce C, but we have made a decision to start the permitting process around the impact assessment. So a new reactor is many, 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 many years away. And but we want to start that early work now. And so, really pleased to be working with the CAO's office and have established some capacity funding for the municipality to be able to have the human resources that you need to participate in that. And we're obviously focused initially on 2025 and 2026 because that's the first stage of the IA process where we're really thinking about what are all the effects. We're kind of quantifying what it would look like. It continues to be an iterative process, but also capacity to ensure that in the impact assessment process, we get all of those right socioeconomic elements. Typically, past environmental assessments that have been done tend to focus on core environmental issues. And the current Impact Assessment Act that we operate under today has really meant to tie in broader socioeconomic elements. So, obviously I know we're very well versed and comfortable working together on, license renewals and the environmental impacts of the site. Those are very well known. But what we're looking to do in this impact assessment and through this new process is a broader focus on the broader socioeconomic elements associated with that. We've committed to work while we're working on that initial step of the impact assessment to work with the municipality to develop a bit of a pathways agreement that will really plot out the various stage gates in which we'll decide, are we continuing with the Bruce C option? Is it advancing? And so we're always well in advance of things. And how do we want to work together? Because ideally we're building an option that we want to see successful. But just like we need to be prepared if we end up at that stage down the road, the municipality wants to be prepared. And the leadership has been very clear with that. And so developing a framework on how we're going to go about that is really important. It doesn't mean we can tackle everything now. We're just doing that early initial piece. But as it progresses, it allows us to determine how are we going to work together going forward and how does that work in parallel. The final thing I do want to cover, and I'm probably been overly generous with your time, and you've been overly generous with your time, is I want to give you a bit of an update in terms of where our refurbishment program is. And there's a slide that says life extension and potential nuclear expansion. And it has all 8 of our kids on there from units 1 to 8. And just to kind of re-anchor ourselves on what our core mission is. Our core mission is to safely operate the units, provide reliability, and sequentially go through and life extend the unit. So looking at that chart, 3 of our 8 units are refurbed, units 1 and 2 and unit 6. We're into unit 3 right now. And that program remains on time and on budget. And we will commence unit 4 on February 1st of next year. What this chart doesn't show is what we call asset management. Asset management is, you focus on the MCR and the big components, but we literally have thousands of other components, multiple systems that all need to be inspected and maintained and eventually replaced. And so right now, while we're refurbishing, we're also at the peak of our asset management. So I like to think about if you're refurbishing a car, your major component replacement would be your transmission, your fuel tank, some of those critical components. Your asset management is everything else that you need for that car to operate for another period of time. We are at the peak of our construction and life extension work at Bruce Power right now. We've been at the peak from 2023 through 2024 and 2025. So as we start to move into overlapping MCRs, a lot of the asset management work will start to be behind us, and we're going to start to see coming down from the peak and into a leveling period. And that's really that when you're thinking about it from a community perspective, we're going to be in a much more stable period now for a number of years. And what we've tried to do, because we know the province of Ontario is very short when it comes to trades and other skills, is we've also tried, as we're doing this work, to sequence it with our planned reactor outages. Because the big limiting factor for us on executing work right now is availability of skilled trades. And most importantly, availability of skilled trades that want to travel to this area to work. When we started the major component replacement and life extension program, we had about 25% of people working on our project were local, and about 75% of people travel from outside of the immediate area. Through the training and the development, that ratio has shifted to more people that are permanent here. So about moving from 25 to 35% people local. But obviously, given the region we live in, and there not being multiple large infrastructure projects underway, we will always rely on a large degree of people who can travel. And unlike the periods of time that we had 10, 15 years ago, keep in mind, we had more people on our site during the restart of units 1 and 2 than we do now. So we've never exceeded that peak that we had 10 years ago. But what's different now is those people who from Eastern Canada, from Northern Ontario, from the GTA, there is so much infrastructure work going on, whether it's in energy, whether it's in large industry, or whether it's in commercial and residential, that tradespeople have so many options of places to go. So we're very fortunate. We have a higher percentage of people now than we did 6 years ago, local, because obviously they want to work local if they're here with their families. But trades availability will continue to be a real challenge. Darlington is blessed with the fact that they are located in the GTA. And within the GTA, it's very easy to go home every night with a lot of other work options and living there. So anyway, that's really what I wanted to cover tonight. Happy to take any questions, and maybe once we're done questions, I do have a very brief memento I'd like to leave council with before I head out tonight. And you can get a picture if you'd like to. And thanks for the water, John. I was choking up there.
Questions from members of council? Councilor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, John, for coming. Oh, John, James.
Thanks for the compliment.
I know. You guys are so similar. I'm getting you all mixed up now.
There you go.
But anyways, just wanted to thank you for coming. Couple little things, being Ward 2, and thank you for allowing sort of Mystic Cove Gate. And we are opening it up a little earlier this year. We're going to start opening it up December 1st. Just for, if you could, make sure, maybe that's John's responsibility, send a note to your team, just make sure that everyone behaves themselves, because we're going through Invergura and Lorne Beach, and I have to tell the same thing to the residents, that this is an exception. So if we can behave ourselves, it's a great safety program. So let's move on to that one.
My understanding of that is we only use that in certain situations, right? So it's something we appreciate in a safety situation to have to deal with that. We really appreciate it. And it's something we use with great care, and we will definitely reinforce that when or if it opens.
Thank you, because Beeline sometimes is closed. Another thing is that I live fairly close to the site itself, and I actually have those pills K1. Is there any opportunity to have some flavored ones? They're absolutely, have you ever tried one? I'll tell you, they're quite a shock. But anyways,
you're not supposed to eat it. You're supposed to keep them. But basically all it is a salt pill, that I hate to disappoint.
That's exactly what they
coloring on it.
Yeah,
right?
I tried one accidentally. I won't tell you. Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about, and thank you very much for funding some of the capability for us, because we really need it. But the interesting thing is I was looking through some of my old records and sort of going back to the MCR, and we had an impact study on the MCR and everything. And some of the lessons, and this isn't aimed at you, but some of the lessons we learned were sort of valuable, and maybe we should revisit them. I mean, let me just sort of say the expansion did not quite take place the way we thought it was going to do. In Kincardine, we only grew by maybe 1.5% every year in population. The biggest surprise came to us is that instead of businesses building infrastructure here, they really took over the retail in our community and everything. Not saying good or bad, just saying that's what it is. I think there's some value that we might want to take a look at the MCR now that we've been into it for 2 or 3 years and really sort of see what lessons we learned and be able to use that for the impact study coming up on possibly Bruce C. Because I think there's a few things that were surprising for us, good things and bad things. So
Sure.
it's about time we maybe take a look. Thanks, James.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I think that's really been the spirit of the discussions. And you know, our first step, for example, with getting suppliers to the area was relocate. And frankly, the reason why they pick storefronts in not just Kincardine, but similar to communities around, same dynamic as there were empty storefronts with boarded up, and now there's life there. Our hope is over time is how do we move those folks into let me call it more appropriate longer term office type space and open those spaces up for small businesses. So I think that's a shared goal. And we want those lessons learned, right? Oftentimes we think that the issues that we have in our community are unique. You can go to any community in Canada, there's affordability issues, there's like all the things we talk about here are very consistent. What's different in this area is our unique ability to work together and come together and try to work through those in advance and take advantage of what we have to say, how do we get the best possible outcome? So I'm completely aligned with that. And I think there are some lessons learned that we can do better with that knowledge of hindsight and apply that going forward. I think it's a great point.
James, thank you so much, and John too. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to update us on activities at Bruce Power, and we too encourage the growing relationship between Bruce Power and the municipality. So once again, thanks very much for being.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, I do have something I'd like to leave with council. So I just want to just tell you a little bit of a story. This is why I think it's really appropriate. So you have a great tattoo parlor here in Kincardine. What's it called, John? Sugar Shack. I don't know because I'm not a tattoo guy, but I always find it's amazing what tattoo artists do. And a lot of great tattoo artists in our area. But right after we signed our transaction, we wanted to have a memento for anybody that moved their operation of their office from somewhere in the GTA to here to make as a bit of a welcoming gift. So we asked Scott Duncan to do a sketch of the site, and with his amazing artistic skills, he did this beautiful sketch of the Bruce site. I actually have the artist print of it framed. My wife would not let me put it in our bedroom though, so I had to put it in the office. But he did this beautiful artist sketch of the Bruce site, and we agreed at the time to only make 100 of them. And I'm pleased to report that we've had 57 people that have relocated to the area that we've given these to. We had 2 CEOs retire, Mike Renchek and Duncan Hawthorne, who were 58 and 59. And I thought that just this being our host municipality, and I always look at the artwork in here on the history, that I thought print number 60 would be very appropriately suited. Of course, if you choose, for the council chamber. So I just like to leave this with you and thank you for having us in your municipality.
Find a place of honor amongst the other iconic pictures of our past. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. Appreciate all your here. Have a great council meeting.
Okay, moving on to staff reports. We have the Victoria Park concept design. We need a mover and seconder that council approve the design concept for Victoria Park prepared by Plural Design Inc. and council direct staff for inclusion in the 2026 capital budget, moved by councillors Inchberger and Blackwell. And we have our staff resource, Director Jagaleski, and Sean Kelly from Plural Design is online as well. So Director, if you would, please.
Thank you, and through you, I'll keep this brief. I certainly want to welcome Sean Kelly and Jacqueline Short is on the line as well from Plural Design Inc. They're here this evening to present, as you know, the concept drawings for Victoria Park. Before I pass it over to the two of them, I just wanted to take a minute and really thank the public who have been part of our engagement process through this journey of coming up with a concept design. We've been extremely impressed with the amount of feedback that we've received, whether people are just merely passionate about the area, whether they're a regular user, they provide a special event, or members of our Accessibility Advisory Committee or our Heritage Advisory Committee. We've had a tremendous amount of input, so I just wanted to extend my appreciation to those that have provided that. And so, as I said before, we've got Sean here and Jacqueline, and they're prepared to present the concept drawings to you this evening.
Sean, thank you for being here this evening. I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Am I sharing the slides on this end or are you doing it on that end, Nicole?
You should be able to share now if you'd like to go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Let's get this done. Okay. So I can't
Yep,
tell
we
if
can
it's,
see it.
you can see it up at your end. Great. Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you there tonight. Running short on time, a couple of engagements tonight, but I'm happy to do this and be there. And thank you for the introduction, Jane. We've been working on this project for a couple of well, a few months now, I guess 6 months or so. We find it to be an exciting project on the go for the community. But before we get going, I just wanted to thanking again Jane and Mike for helping us negotiate this project and certainly getting it on stream with the community. And as Jane had mentioned, there has been significant community input, which we really, really appreciate. You get comments and maybe even better, you get critique. And I think it just makes for a better game plan for the future for any site that you're dealing with. So that was really really helpful on that end. I'm also joined tonight with Jacqueline, and she's in the background just in case we need some background information that I may not be able to present for you. I just want to start and say, the importance of a project like this, and most folks don't realize, they just think, oh, it's another park, but this is actually pretty special. You have a downtown park connected to the downtown directly, so this has undertones of economic development where we're looking at, reinforcing place in a destination type community. The festival happens here, parts of it happen here. There's market activity here. So you talk about economic development. You also talk about leisure services and being able to provide better places for community members and their visitors and guests. What goes with that, however, is civic pride. And I'd like to say that, community satisfaction with infrastructure that's happening in communities all across rural Ontario is really, really important. We're seeing a lot of places being upgraded over time and also maturing past an incremental approach to improvement where, it was really dependent on service group activity. And what we're seeing now is townships and municipalities and that having to take these on, maintain them, keep them going, meet expectations. And creating places that people want in their communities. And it's not an easy thing to do, with the downtown connection, with all the legacy parts that may be in this park. There's plenty of it, and we've heard about it. You also get community members, some of them that are really tied to different aspects of the park, whether it's behavior use or the elements that are in the park, as well as a municipal commitment to try and provide the best they can within fiscal reality. It becomes a complex venture to look at a place like this and go, how do we deal with it? Let's add that this has a significant what I call urban tree canopy as well. So you got to bring in the ecological layer and the environmental good pieces that are there, and you need to include that this in all the considerations and for everything that you want to do. So, looking at this park and doing a few things, and I'm going to suggest we started in February 2024. Here we are, we're in October, and gone through a few things. The first thing, when Jane came to me and said, and Mike came to me and they said, we have a declining gazebo. It's needing some work. Maybe it's past its prime. Maybe its location is not the best place for it. What kind of park could we have? In addition, we also have these legacy bits such as the fountain, and how do we get to deal with that? We've been to this site on many occasions. I've actually been to this site over a 20-year period, not to inventory existing conditions, but to be a park user, to be a participant in how it relates to the streets, certainly the streetscapes improvements of 2006 and over the last couple of years. But for us to identify the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and some of the constraints, we have to have a different eye on this. So we looked at all the existing facilities. We actually looked at all the interpretive elements that are there. And in this case, there's not a whole lot of interpretation, but just basically marking a time frame. We see that with the canyon, we see that with the plaques, we see this with the fountain as well. But looking also at the existing vegetation I just spoke about, having significant urban canopy, really important. There's significant vegetation, and then the existing pathways, and more notably the desire lines, those pathways that are not there, but those paths that people do use on a day-to-day basis, showing how people use that park and how they maneuver around them. We also looked at access and egress, how people park, how do they get into this park, and what goes with that is it accessible? Is it not? Is it serving the need in a current park of this day to a standard that's expected? User behavior, I've kind of mentioned too, and certainly the parking itself. That was our first bit. We put a lot of material together just to make sure we had information that we can then take to go into a next phase, which we pretty much called listening and learning, where we go out to the community and look at different things that are, our findings of the park. We want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure we're meeting the tone of the community, and we want confirmation on those things we do not get right. So we worked with municipal staff to kind of understand the past and present use. And what we're trying to do is anticipate the future and that kind of need as well. So, we identify current limitations and opportunities for improvement. What we looked at and what we're hearing about were things like aging infrastructure, visitor safety and experience for sure. Accessibility and OADA compliance was a big piece of this, but also consideration for fads where applicable. Crime prevention through environmental design is something we do every time we take a public piece of property, trying to make it the best place we can and not providing opportunity for nefarious business and things you may not want in that space. But as I said, our lens is always about respecting the past, understanding what's going on now in the present, hopefully anticipating the future in a favorable way. And then what goes with this, obviously, is the fiscal responsibility and maintenance piece. We, the middle of late June, we came back to the community with concept development. The way we approach this is saying, okay, we have to look at this and say, okay, we can deal with movement. We can deal with the legacy of the lakeside. We can also look at maximizing moving. So you have meaningful movement, maximizing movement, and lakeside legacy. These were concept plans that we use to foster community conversation, solicit feedback. And like I say, sometimes the comments can be good and sometimes they're less good. That's not a problem. We are looking for critique because that leads to probably a hybrid plan that hopefully is serving more people than perhaps these three may not have. So I just want to, mention the engagement initiatives, and probably to date right now, starting, if we started in June, we had an open house back in June 6th. We did at the Kingarm Welcome Center, an invitation extended to key stakeholders. We actually, in that evening, met Scottish Festival folk. A couple of people met us on site to talk about the concepts on site and had a great meeting with them. We also had an online opportunity where we did a comment opportunity that was made available. That started through June 6th, but went all the way to the third week or the 21st of June as well. I attended Accessibility Advisory Committee as well to speak about the types of things that could happen in the park and how to best serve accessibility in the community on this site. We also had email correspondence from some very passionate residents, and we still get it, and some counselors as well, but all good stuff. And it kind of builds into that hopper of information that we use to figure what we can do with this. We came back on October 1st with a hybrid. I'll get to that in a sec, at the Davidson Center, which was really well received for the most part. And then on October 1st to the 7th, we had an online version for those folks that could not attend that meeting on the 1st. Early findings for us on the 3 concepts we shown, with basically preference out there where concepts 1 and 2 were preferred. And I guess the minutiae of those concepts are not really, really important at this level, because we've departed from that. We've moved that on and we've developed those further, taking in additional information and comments from the community. The themes and priorities, however, remain pretty much the same. Creating spaces for everyone and improving accessibility seemed to be something that was really rising to the top. Great. We endeavor to do that anyway. Celebrating legacy. This has a lot of history that we can honor. We looked at that. Obviously, maintaining, enhancing canopy cover. Heard a lot about all the trees were coming down, new park design, skies falling. Not necessarily the case, but we do appreciate the fact that there's a fervor. So certainly maintaining, and if we can, enhance the canopy cover on this site. Promoting fiscal responsibility. How do we provide a park site that will serve the community very well, yet the municipality can maintain and continue to maintain and show some resilience on that and commitment to that in time. Planning for longevity and realistic maintenance is always part of what we do. And there's some community voices that we heard some comments from, but generally, things around, and I'll point to the 3rd comment there, being the municipality needs to invest in public spaces to keep them beautiful and accessible for all. We went back after that one meeting, after everyone was telling us, oh my gosh, you got a fountain in here and it's really, really important. And you got the cannons here. Where are the cannons on the plan? I'm not seeing them. We need to have those in there. What about the plaques? Jacqueline spent a good deal of time learning about industry origins for this site in Kincardine, how the public marketplace came to be, well, how it was designated as an open space, the Diamond Jubilee for Queen Victoria, and certainly commemorative name change that's happened in this site, and then any of the evolving needs. So we dug pretty deep to make sure that we would capture that in the next piece when we come back. So we created a hybrid plan, and I want to caution everyone, this is not exactly the plan that may be built ultimately in the end. Obviously, there's a price tag to these things, and there's still comments coming in. There's a few things that could be done. What I can tell people, though, this is actually at a conceptual level. This is identifying the notion that perhaps the gazebo will be transformed into something else that might be more performance savvy. It might have a dedicated space around there, taking in all the cues from accessibility, placing it in a location that makes sense. After speaking to Scottish Festival folk and other people in the community, creating an open lawn segment, having connections that seem to be really meaningful for folks, maybe not as a direct as some would want, but we can work with that at a detailed design level when you get into the pre-construction package, if I may. Big piece on this is actually having walkways and serviceable entrance points to this park all around the park from all the parking. Currently, we basically have a bollard system, a timber bollard system that just transforms parking right onto a turf environment, not very conducive to proper movement into the park. But somehow organizing that and creating a spatial organization that really works. The other thing we're looking at is putting something at the far end to the far right side of the plan. But there's still open lawn, there's still an interpretive space there, and there's a location for the fountain that may have some sensibility. So the park's being opened up. It's being used for a bunch of different things. It has a market opportunity for us. Circulation's being increased and enhanced, meeting accessibility needs. We're providing a performance space that not only can it be a generator for revenue, but it can certainly be a great place for the community and at a grade that I believe is something that's maintainable for the municipality as well. The other things are playing on the key assets of what happens around the park. And we want to make sure that when you have the Center of the Arts and you have the associated washrooms out there, they're visible, they're accessible, and we actually get some really good accessible points and pathways to that as well. In this particular scheme, what is notable is after we came back from the first 3 pre-schemes that we had, we heard, oh, you're going to be taking way too many trees. Not necessarily the case. So if you look at the very swooping path coming down, tighter down to the Market Walk along Durham Street South, whether that happens on the bottom or the top, again, is a detail that happens probably at a construction layout time. But generally, what we're trying to do is connect the front end of the park, Queen Street, back over to Princess Street. That swoop, in this case, and this whole plan, results in no actual trees being removed. So, you know, as we listen and what people want, we work hard to make sure we can try and meet this. We still think we can achieve a lot of this. And at the same point, I would say there's probably an arborist requirement to come into this site. And not that I see any real danger trees at this time, but there's definitely trees that may be closer to the end of their life than not. And there might be an opportunity to actually address those trees now. And it doesn't come without future planting or new planting as well. But in this scheme right now, I think we were hitting all the marks that most of the community was telling us. And we did get some critique on this one. You know, I'll be totally transparent on that. And we'll take that and we'll just make it better. So, you know, you're looking at places like, well, is it a gazebo anymore, or is it more of a structure? These days, well, you know, in most of our park work, we're not putting in wooden structures anymore. We're not elevating them to the degree that we would see in the current gazebo, where you have to have handrail, guardrail situations, and folks sit in lawns and lawn chairs looking up, trying to see folks through a guardrail and handrail. Those days are kind of gone right now. And in fact, to even make that gazebo accessible and compliant, you would need a ramp segment built onto it. So that becomes an expense in itself, let alone the disrepair that you might be repairing in the interim. But, you know, we can look at something that could be elevated slightly, made accessible that way, closer to grade, having some sort of upfront apron of a pavilion. You can use it in the day, you can use it at the night, you can use it for community events, you might be able to rent it out. This was a very favorable piece that we were hearing from the community. Again, supporting other events, facilitating movement, getting walkways that get people into the park, and perhaps get some programming. We do know there's market activity happening right now. That can only heighten and get better with the proper infrastructure. So allowing those things to happen, providing a place for those things to happen, and providing access points where people can actually be on pavements, get to them on an accessible way is a very good thing to do, in addition to probably having an offset from parking environment where vehicles servicing the market environments can be placed as well. The fountain, you know, the fountain was a big piece. Do we fix the current fountain? Do we make a new fountain? Where does the fountain go? We've taken a lot of information on this. This model can be very easily sourced and replaced if need be. If you need the old pieces and you need it repaired, that's fine too. I'm not so sure on the economic sense ability of fixing something that's going to be in decline in the future. It makes as much sense as finding something that will work brand new. But creating this and siting it in a plaza space or a small space that provides some history. So in this case, in our schemes, what we were trying to show is a place where people can gather, people can come. It can be programmable. It can have an interpretive layer that speaks to all the elements that are in the park and the history of the park, not just the elements. And it provides a much more savvy piece of infrastructure for visitors, for community members. It captures civic pride. It celebrates those things that may not be known right now. And that's what we were finding in our kind of deep dive into the history, is that what we were being told by a lot of people in the community wasn't necessarily accurate. Not to say it's wrong, but I'm feeling pretty confident right now that we've found a lot more information that reveals the value of these elements to the community. But citing these things and heightening them rather than just having them incrementally placed in a park site is probably the way to do it. It goes for preservation and it goes for usage. And if you provide something that people use, the preservation comes naturally. So this slide really just shows the fountain being offset from a plaza space. It is still there to the left-hand side, regardless of what view you're looking at. But, you know, it opens up this space to be a much more programmable space that can be useful on game day, whether it's festival or other activities in the park. So these are kinds of things you'd work out and you'd figure out and get some more input on. And when the time comes and you need to do this work, hopefully you get the information you need and we get this done well for the community. I'd also note that, you know, we're also showing additional planting happening. Not that we're trying to burden probably the Parks or Rec or Community Services folks all that much, but, you know, purposeful planting that goes well, that defines site, it gives you some spatial definition, selecting a plant palette that is pretty well low to no maintenance. They'll arrive and do their piece on their own is a really good thing to do. And also getting younger plantings intermixed with the current aging canopy of that park makes a whole lot of sense for the future. So our key takeaways is that, you know, our hybrid concept was really about welcoming visitors and community members, celebrating heritage, realigning performances in the park, improving accessibility, obviously, lighting up the space. So our lighting plan is far better than what we have. Our pavement plan is far better than what's in the park right now. Protecting our mature canopy and reinforcing that with new canopy opportunities. Connecting the facilities and making sure that, you know, we're working off of facilities and embracing some of the good things that come off an existing facility and kind of pulling that out and building off that with new facilities and enhancing the parking. The parking will, I think, would be a game changer for the site, given the pressures and the demands that we do see in the downtown area. I've been there in the summer. I know what it's like. Catering to parking and events as well and providing that actual parking around there, limiting I think easy access into a park with vehicles where you don't have to use maintenance heavy bollards situated in turf. And what we'd have is a barrier curb all the way around the park with proper parking and a proper proportion of accessible parking to boot. We actually are reducing pavements on many levels. Other than the new sidewalks that we might have around the perimeter of the park, we're looking at reduction of pavements and keeping that to something that is achievable and in most cases necessary for some of the elements of the park. So that really does take us to a few things. When we came back to our October 1st meeting, we had pretty good satisfaction. I know we, there are people out there that were certainly concerned about what would happen with things like the fountain, and can't we just fix the fountain and leave everything else similar for the gazebo? But they tend to be on the quiet side of the minority. When you look at a survey and you have close to 200 comments and 39 comments, 40 comments come in saying just fix the gazebo, that's all we need to do. We kind of look at that and go, well, how does that rate for us? Our community engagement in June was similar. We had a bunch of people come out, 21 handwritten comments, very few were naysayers on the project. Our second was really favorable, 71 attendees, over 40 written hand comments. Not all of them great. We had about 9 of them, I think, 8 or 9 of them that we found maybe it's the same people from the other 2 events, but we understand for the most part that people overwhelmingly were showing strong support for the hybrid approach. They had satisfaction with how and what direction we were taking with all the elements on that. And we felt very good with the comments and even the critiques that we were getting on it, that this creates a great path going forward. So, again, we're detailed oriented, ensuring our accessibility and standard compliance is there. Satisfaction with fountain commemoration. We're seeing that people were really pretty happy with how we were addressing that. Achieving adequate shade. Sure, we're not taking any of the trees away. So if anything, you get what you have. Performance, stage, scale, elevation, access was brought up. folks were saying, can we raise that stage a bit in a performance center? Sure, we can. You know, we can certainly do that, but we want to also be mindful of you know, that balance between accessibility and certainly materiality and finishing touches. Everyone thought this was, you know, certainly in the perspectives that we're showing, was this was a place you wanted to be. It looked lush. It looked like it was a great asset to a community. The materials were very achievable for a place like this. This is great in that you're using a mature site and not necessarily a brand new site. So there's some really initial hits with this. So I think all par, we were doing pretty well, and certainly all rowing in the right direction. But it does come to budgeting. It does come to budgeting, and we do need to look at that and what it means. And, you know, these aren't numbers, these could be dealt with on a number of different ways, but, you know, to be totally transparent, we break our projects out into pieces. You know, in this case, site works, removals, hardscaping, site furnishing, structures, and sort of softscaping, typical things that we would do in landscape architecture projects, and really, you know, worked on kind of quantity takeoffs and what we need. In some cases, we had allowances, but for the most part, really detailing everything out so Jane and her crew can look at this and go, what is achievable and what's not. There's a big number for hardscaping because we have a big number there pretty much for walkways. And doing it right. If you're going to have a perimeter sidewalk around the park, and that's a real consideration, and if you're going to do it at a level that's accessible, it's going to be a lot wider than typical sidewalks or sidewalks we kind of know and know we need to actually expand on. So we got some plaza numbers in there, certainly, and you know, not all this may need to be worked. I mean, you get down to things like lighting under site furnishings. That's a big ticket item, $200,000, you know, 20 lights with an allowance for each light. We don't know what kind of subgrade infrastructure we're going to get into. So again, we're probably generous on a lot of the numbers here just to make sure we were, you know, covering the things and not leaving anyone short in the end on this. But generally, looking at this is very on par with much of the community projects that we're seeing in certainly in communities the scale of the municipality for Kincardine. And maybe that's all I really need to say here on this. But at the end of the day, like I say, you know, I think we get some very good comments back, and you know, looking at whether we're getting accessibility, making sure we're keeping our canopy, servicing the downtown core well, making sure we have our legacy bits in there, and working with materials and finishes that will provide an enduring park for the future is where we were working at. So that's all I'm going to say about it, but I'm certainly open to take some and receive some questions.
Thank you, Sean. I'm just going to look at our director. Anything to add to or complement Sean's presentation?
No, thank you, and through you. It's been a pleasure working with Sean through this project. And as I said before in my opening remarks, it's obvious that the large part of this community is very passionate about this area. And Sean said it too, and I will reiterate it. We are very fortunate to have this gem in the middle of our community. Not many communities have a nice park, a beautiful park that is distracted with playground equipment and other things, and just a nice green space. So it's an area we definitely have to cherish.
Questions, comments from council members? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, this question maybe is perhaps directed to our director. We've had a couple conversations around the concept design, whether it's finalized, whether there's been some recommendations or potential for some changes. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to some of the conversations perhaps you've had around the fountain location, and whether there's any potential adjustments to the concept design around that.
Thank you for the question. There's certainly been a lot of conversations, and I'll say misconceptions about the fountain as well. The conversations that we've had with Sean and his team is that it's an integral part of the park, and again, another aspect that our users are very passionate about, and it's evident that people don't want it touched or want it relocated, and so our recommendations have been, let's leave the fountain where it is and work around that, as well as the cannons as well, and ensuring that we've got those other elements as part of that process. So I think that answers your question and what you're asking. So
Follow up, please.
Thank you, through you. So one of my concerns, or one of the conversations that I've had around the approving the concept design, which I think is the terminology that's in the motion, is that this concept design isn't actually perhaps what the end result would be. And so I'm wondering about whether there's some benefit in continuing to amend or adjust or refine the concept plan so we can get to a part where the community can see what it may actually look like versus this concept plan, which is kind of still in flux, perhaps.
Through you, many times when you have concept designs and you're working towards construction designs, there can be movement, I'll say. And sometimes that's because of space and ensuring that it fits within the space itself. It can be areas of movement, it can be sidewalks. So there are times when you do go to a construction design where there is some change from your original concept design. I will be honest with council that, you know, when we went through 2024 budget and council and staff approached council to get approval to redesign the staging area, it was council that had asked that we look at accessibility, which I fully support, and I think that was a really good move. We were able to acquire Stemsky Kelly through this through this process to provide that service. I would confidently say that they have provided the scope of work that we had requested. If we want to go back, if we want to expand that, then my recommendation is that you ask staff to come back with a report on what that may look like.
Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just for my clarity, because I wasn't at the events, I'd like to know which service groups looked at it. I don't know whether you spoke to the pipe band. Like, I'm curious what groups. I know you mentioned in the presentation the Scottish Festival walked the perimeter, but I've heard that Heritage, like the Kincardine Heritage Group, also looked at it. But like, if you could just outline which groups actually provided feedback and what that feedback was, it'd be helpful.
Yep, thank you. And through you, recognizing the scope of the work and our budget constraints, I'll say, for this project, what we did is we did the community engagement, which involved different than what we did with our other plans, such as our Recreation and Parks Master Plan, where we had individual interviews. We didn't have that opportunity to do this in this particular project because of the considerations of the fees. So we extended personal invites to all of those groups. User groups that use it for special events, Accessibility Advisory Committee. Obviously, we were at that meeting because the accessibility component to it. We had invited the Heritage Advisory Committee to the meeting as well, all of the special event groups, and it was the Scottish Pipe, or the Scottish Festival, that said, we're unable to come to the meeting. Can we meet you an hour before so that we can review the plans? That's how that meeting came to be. I'm not sure if I'm missing any other ones, Sean, through that process, but we had invited personal invites to the community engagement evening for them to come to.
Councillor, please.
Just as a follow-up, I'm still not quite getting which groups provided feedback. So did you have representatives from all those groups you just listed? And if so, what was the feedback? And if not, which groups were absent?
So there was not, through you, there was not a sign-in process for those engagement evenings. We just sent an email to them and let those groups know that there was a public engagement evening if they wanted to come and provide input. We also had them on social media and on our website. So if they weren't able to come to those community engagement nights, they had an opportunity to do it through that process.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'll help a little bit with Heritage Kincardine. I'm looking at their draft meeting minutes from October the 15th. Their recommendations that the property is a designated heritage site and the features outlined in the bylaw be retained. The heritage fountain be located in close proximity to the original location, and new buildings or structures proposed for the park be constructed to match the heritage aesthetics of the area. They passed a resolution to this regard. They also had some concerns about the open lawn on the north side of the park and suggested another path through the middle of the park. They also, there were some suggestions made that sail shades were suggested to provide shade over the concrete performance plaza area, And also there was, as I think Sean or the director outlined, they had some concern about an on-grade performance stage and visibility from the seating area. So I'll give that feedback. I do have some comments of my own. Okay, so I'm gonna look at the drawing here. I just want to emphasize for everybody, that we're at the conceptual design stage here. And I look at the drawing and really, I think what we're at this point is there is an issue with accessing the park for pedestrians, especially those with accessibility issues. This provides a perimeter way for them to access all parts of it, which if you look at old drawing or old photos, very old photos of Victoria Park, before the parking was put in here, there actually was a means to get there, that the parking that was put around it in some ways made it tougher for pedestrians to get there. I think the Performance Plaza, I mean, it's there. It's moved into a better location. The conceptual design has the fountain. Where it's specifically located in the park is something that can be fine-tuned. There's a lot in there that I think hits. Also, like Sean pointed out, per the feedback, there were 3 conceptual designs started at the beginning. Surprisingly, option 3, which was basically an X through the park with the fountain in the middle, is the original way the park was laid out. And so the feedback was overwhelmingly to depart from that for various reasons. So I think there's things to tweak, but conceptually, I think that through this process, what's in front of us addresses a large number of what I would consider to be the deficiencies with the park.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Unfortunately, I couldn't approve the design concept tonight. There seems to be a few areas that we need to talk about, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to work through this. There is some feedback from the public now that's not quite happy with the design concept and want to bring some more historical things back to the park. And I sort of agree with them. When I start seeing figures, I'll be honest with you, for $780,000, I just look at that and go, oh my God, I mean, where do we find that kind of money? And do we really need to do that kind of improvements to the park? When we first acknowledged that we needed the pavilion fixed or looked at, I agree. But I don't think, this kind of cost and this kind of concepts really where the public wants to be. And I think we need to do some work on this. And maybe we should just refer this whole motion until we get a little more feedback. I'd like to put the pavilion back in, but at a different location and a lot smaller size and not an elevated pavilion, because that pavilion's been around for quite a few years. I think, moving the fountain, whether it goes here or there, or just leave it the way it is and have a little more concept around the fountain. I disagree with you from not having wooden structures. I like wooden structures. I think that we could actually have a nice stage performance, very much like Fairy Lake up in Port Elgin, Southampton. I see that there's more work to be done here, and I don't want to move ahead. I don't want the public and the public to come back on us on this one. So I probably just refer this whole project and keep working at it until we get a concept that we can all agree to. Because right now, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired of only having 219 response people. That's less than 2% of our population, or 2012, sorry. But if we can't get 5%, 10% of the population, are we really hitting it out of the park? So maybe there's not a lot of people interested in this, but if we decide to go ahead with this and decided to go with this design concept, I guarantee it will hear more than 212 people. So I would refer this whole motion until we do some more work. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair Director. I think we can agree that the issue about Victoria Park certainly needs some updating. On the note of whether tonight, the request of us is effectively to approve the conceptual design. We've heard that the conceptual design is clearly not dealing with some of the specifics that may be altered. You did mention that, to Councillor Blackwell, that perhaps the alternative to an extent is staff coming back with a report. What would be the purpose of that, other than saying if there was to be an expansion of scope? Would it address some of the issues that are being raised tonight? Is that a possibility?
Thank you, and through you, I think I said it, but I'll say it again if I didn't say it. Plural has provided us the scope of work that we've requested. If I'm hearing council correctly this evening, some members are requesting that additional work be completed on the concept designs. There is a cost for that, and I would have to go back and do some investigating and report back to council, as I can't answer that question this evening.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you. I'll put this question, well, first of all, I'd like to actually acknowledge Sean and the Plural team. I don't think I've said thank you yet. I have really appreciated the opportunity for folks to get engaged. This is such a special park for our community. It's something that I hold dear. It's something that, our community is. It's really a key central gathering place. And so I want to make sure that we're doing it justice. And I do appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. I think for me, there's been some real identification of kind of in principle of key features, which is a performance area, increased accessible walkways, and the restoration of our key historical elements, which is our heritage items like the cannon and the fountain. There's a potential grant opportunity that I think may be beneficial for us to explore, which is through the Legacy Fund with Canadian Heritage. And one of the things that could be possible is if we look at exploring that opportunity for funding. It could be that if there is additional work that we want to do before finalizing it, eventually that might be something that's a grantable expense. So one of my, I guess I can't really make a motion now because there's a motion on the floor. But that's just, I wonder if maybe perhaps the director could speak a little bit about what might be needed in order to explore the kind of capacity to look at a potential grant over the next couple of months.
I'm sorry, that's not anywhere in the motion at all. So even though I appreciate the opportunity to discuss different funding, the prospect of hanging money out there in front of us shouldn't be what affects our decision. The request is, the motion is to approve the conceptual drawing. It's pretty high level, and I don't think it's appropriate to at this point to be wandering too far from where we're actually at with the motion, Councillor. Councillor Steinhoff, great, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just wondering if this is a question for our director, may need to be addressed through like a two-parter, because part of what I saw was that we needed agreement for the fountain and cannons to be repaired, which I think all of us are on board with because they're heritage pieces we want to preserve. And it looked like in the report, and I'm probably getting confused with where I was, but I have read all the content, and it said in 2025, we wanted to have a spend to deal with the fountains and the cannons. I think there's alignment there that we want to preserve those historical functions. So we should absolutely be making sure that that park gets approved, that the funding is there for those fixes. I think what I'm hearing is that as much as we'd like to approve work to Victoria Park in kind, we're not confident enough with the concept without a bit more detail and flushing out and discussion to do that full approval to be able to confidently move on that. And so maybe part of that confidence is some additional inputs and looking at the grant, and maybe it's a report back at a different time and an approval of the funds for the 2025 repair work. I'm asking though if that sounds appropriate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, In regard to the improvements, we continually do improvements anyway, and that's part of our 2025 budget that will be coming forward to council to seek approval for that. In regard to, I'm not 100% sure I'm following you with the second question, if in regards to the grant.
Well, I'm just,
So
I-
I'm gonna cut in. We're not gonna talk about the grant tonight. The grant is a separate issue about funding, a whole different level of where we're at. Motion tonight, if I might, my interpretation, my understanding of the motion, we are addressing the broader conceptual idea, and as Councillor Hinchberger commented, we're looking at the placement of a performance area. We're looking at the placement of a fountain. We're looking at the elimination of the gazebo. We're looking at the trails through it, whether they go there or whether they go on the north side. Those are issues that will be discussed later. I think what we're trying to do is give direction to staff that we approve the conceptual idea of this, the broad picture. I would imagine that as staff is able, they will come back, and it's going to take more funding, like when, unless Plural has got the hard and fast design for the performance area. This is what it looks at. But we're going to come back. I'm thinking, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but in the next year and a half, we're going to get, this is what the stage is going to look like, and this is where it's going to go. This is where the fountain, this is where council will make the decision about where the fountain goes. This is the decision that council will make about where the sidewalks go. It won't be, here's the last thing we're going to do, approve it, yes or no. It'll be a consensus building process where we look at components of the park based on the concept we have tonight. These are the major components. And over time, we will say, yes, we agree with this. Let's move on to the next part of the design. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, you may cut me off, but I'm going to try and keep it on topic. So one of the things here is that we're being asked to approve the design concept. And what I'm hearing from what I'm sharing and from what I'm hearing from others is that we aren't quite comfortable with the design concept as it is. What I've heard from the director is that it will potentially cost us more money in order to make those changes before we move forward. What I'm suggesting is if we agree in principle to a refresh of the park as part of the that we're interested in moving forward, that would potentially allow us to look for some funding sources. And then we could consider what that actual adjustment of the plan looks like as part of all of that.
Would you like to comment on that or just acknowledge that it was a good idea? Okay. Councillor Prenger, please. Councillor Prenger, did you have your hand up?
I did, thank you. I don't want to drag this out. So I'll think, I'm sorry, a point of order, please.
Yeah, point of order. Can you remind the gallery of the rules of decorum?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Councillor. According to our code of conduct, our procedural bylaw, it is incumbent not only upon council members, but upon members in the gallery to refrain from making comments that impede or hinder the deliberations of council. So if you're loud, if you're disruptive or whatever, then I will have the responsibility of politely asking you to stop. And if you don't stop, then I get to ask you to absent yourself from the chamber. So members of gallery, please refrain from interrupting council conversation. Thank you very much. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Kelly and his team for the work that's gone into this. Landscape design and construction is actually my first career, so I have an idea of the amount of work that's gone into this and the consultation process. I admit that with the first few designs, I was hesitant about where this is going to go, but I think the hybrid design that you've presented is much more on track of what the community is looking for, and I actually like it quite a bit more than the first three. I'll say I personally actually like the concept around the fountain idea, where it is, and the space and the way it's laid out. I've seen something very similar in an American city that I've been in, and it was being used in such a way that brought the community together. It's actually a really great little space around that fountain area. So I actually quite like that. I too, though, have concerns with the overall concept and the way we're being asked to deal with this concept plan versus construction plans versus like the whole process. I feel personally like there's slightly different information coming from Mr. Kelly than from our director and how it's going to work. I'm still confused, even though it seems to be explained 3 times already. So I think we either do something like what's been suggested by Councillor Stewart or Blackwell, that we push this off to a different date for a decision on this, or we change the motion a little bit. I'd be happy to do a friendly amendment to say we accept the plan and not approve it, so that we can make the conceptual plan, so we can make some progress on this. But if we want to defer it, I would also support that.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. In the interest of moving things along, I was going to propose an amendment that council receive the plan and we continue on and let staff continue to work from there.
So basically you're, rather than approve, you are receiving. That is the amendment. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Is there a seconder for the motion amended? Okay, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Questions regarding the amendment? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I like your idea. I think that works. But I also worry about where it's just sort of leaving in a void, and that's what I worry about. I agree with you accepting. Would you take a friendly sort of amendment going with your idea, but let's set up an ad hoc committee and let's make it 2 councillors, a staff member and 2 residents, and see if we can move this thing ahead and come back and feed it back to the council. At least this would show that we're working ahead, because right now, if we just accept it, where do we go from here? Thank you.
So that's a whole different motion, Councillor Stewart, the process moving forward. So not that it's good or bad or otherwise, it really, yeah, we would do that. So that is the challenge with the wording, to receive it is just receive it, and then staff is left, as Councillor Stewart says, in this awful place, like, what do they do? So they included in the 26 capital budget, but there's no indication that we are asking them to bring forward proposals about any one of the conceptual ideas of this design. So if you could explain what the intent of your motion direct staff to do, that's the question.
Certainly, and through the chair, I think this the wording of the change to receive instead of accept or to support gives staff a much wider range here. That's the same wording that was used for our waterfront master plan when it came before council, so we were receiving the plan. In this case, Sean and Pluro have completed their work, their contractual obligations. They did excellent work for what they were hired to do, and if we want them to do more and revise, that's something that can be addressed at a later date. But right now, it allows this meeting to continue on, and it also keeps the door open for staff to bring things back as they deem appropriate going forward, without council signaling or endorsing any particular path forward. If there's something that would involve this park that could be applied to the 2025 budget, I hope we see it there. If staff believes that it would be in the best interest to do something for that, or if in 26 or 27. I have no problems with that, and I don't think the wording prohibits or precludes staff from doing any of that.
Can I have either the director or the CIO just, I just want to clarify what, if they're hearing what you just explained to us, could you give us a sense of, do you understand what you may or may not be able to do in response to us receiving it rather than supporting it? Does it make a difference, or how does that affect the staff direction?
Through you, Mayor, for me, receiving a plan usually means it's just sitting there. I think with respect to both the waterfront master plan that you spoke of, Councillor, and the Parks and Recreation plan, they were received, but there was specific like a number of specific recommendations that would be following up that were going to come back to council. I think the difference with this one is we're looking for where council is at with respect to this particular plan. I don't think that there are individual elements that we would be seeking to come back to council on. So that would be the difference between the example that you provided. For what I am hearing, I am hearing a difference of whether or not there is a desire to have more public engagement or council feedback, or just costing. So I'm not 100% sure if what receiving the report would mean for us in terms of next steps. I would actually think that for this particular example, it would require a motion from council to determine what the next step would be.
Okay, so that is kind of the clarification that if we receive it, that's okay. We're still directing staff for inclusion in the 2026 capital budget, but it would, as our CA said, require some sort of council direction to reinvigorate the process and direct staff to bring whatever we want them to bring back to move the project forward. So we have an amendment on the floor that we receive the design concept. That's the amendment, not the motion. That is changing the word approve to receive. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we have a motion on the floor that council receive the design concept for Victoria Park prepared by Plural Design, and council direct staff for inclusion in the 2026 capital budget. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Draft comprehensive zoning bylaw development services. We welcome manager CBO Dwayne McNabb. We also have Nick Bogart from MHBC Planning, Urban Design, Landscape Architecture Consulting Firm. We need a move. Councillor Stewart, yes.
Some clarification. We approved the amendment from Councillor, and the other amendment, did we approve it or not?
There was no.
Well, the
amendment.
original motion,
The original motion was approved. We voted on that afterwards.
we approved it, so we're marching ahead with the
No,
design?
no, we
Okay.
amended the motion to receive. So we
Okay.
approved the motion to receive.
Okay. Can I sort of interrupt here and maybe try to move this a little bit forward tonight? Would that be okay with you, Chair?
No,
Okay.
we-
I'll make a motion at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. That procedurally correct. Thank you very much. So we need a mover and seconder that council receive the draft comprehensive zoning bylaws information, and that a public open house be held on October 29th, 2024, and further a public meeting be held November 13th, 2024, in accordance with 3412A2 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990. Moved and seconded by Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Hinchberger. Welcome, Dwayne. you get to talk now.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. So thank you very much for hearing this tonight. We're finally getting to the end of hopefully this process, but the bylaw has been pulled together, and I do have Nick Bogart from MHP's Consultants here to do a presentation on the draft bylaw. Again, tonight we just basically notification to council that the bylaw has been pulled together in draft form and will be available, or is available for public comment on various social media outlets on the municipal website. Forums there for comments, but I'd like to bring Nick forward right now just to do a quick overhaul on or overview on the bylaw itself with his presentation from MHPC.
Welcome, Nick. Glad to have you here this evening. You've been busy.
Thank you. We have been busy. Oh, can everyone hear that okay? Excellent. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, members of the community. My name is Nick Bogart with MHBC Planning, and just here tonight to provide an update on the zoning bylaw project we've been working with municipal staff on. And I'll try to make sure I only hit the right buttons. So here today just to talk a bit about the work that's been completed, touch on some background, the recent things we've been working on, hit on some highlights of the new zoning bylaw, share some information about next steps and timing, and then answer any questions that might come up. So first, a little refresher, what do zoning bylaws regulate? So the Planning Act provides authority for municipalities to pass zoning bylaws. The municipality has a bylaw. They may do things such as, there's just some examples here, restrict the use of land, location, and use of buildings or structures, prohibit location of buildings or structures for a number of reasons, regulate things like height and size and location and floor area of buildings. Look at regulating the frontage and depth of a lot and proportion of an area that may be occupied by buildings or structures. So that it's kind of a general framework of what you can do on a property. And then in terms of a bit of high level background, so the current zoning bylaw dates from 2003, was last updated in 2012. And the Planning Act requires an update to zoning bylaw 3 years after the official plan update comes into force. So the new official plan was approved in 2021, and the work on the zoning bylaw has been underway. And now we're at the stage of having the draft zoning bylaw ready for release to the community. There's been lots of work undertaken related to this project over the last couple of years, which speaks really to the magnitude of the undertaking. We had the initial review report that I previously updated council on, and following that, we had open houses, also mentioned last time I was here as well. And then from that, we prepared internal draft of the zoning bylaw for municipal and county staff to review. We had a number of working sessions with staff to review the input and take feedback on the bylaw and discuss comments. And then that resulted in having the draft bylaw available for review now. And that was shaped by the initial review report and then input we got from the community and then also input from staff. And then, of course, new provincial legislation that keeps coming up. So we've integrated that as we go along. And we had a few overall project goals of the zoning bylaw update, and they've really helped to guide the process. So it was really to incorporate direction from the official plan into the zoning bylaw, conform to recent provincial policies, which at the time included the 2020 PPS and guidance on farm-related uses and accessory dwelling units and things like that. And that continues to evolve. So we've integrated that as we go along. Also looking at really improving the usability of the bylaw and readability, making sure it's clear and easy to use for people, and then just make sure we use current information to update mapping. So I wanted to just touch on the initial review report just for a minute or two. So it was prepared as a result of the review that we undertook of the bylaw and consultation with county and staff as we started getting going. And there's a number of high-level recommendations that we included in that. number of things to look at in the zoning bylaw update, which was things like accessory buildings, accessory residential uses, parking, putting in mixed use zones, looking at the special provisions, updating mapping, looking at definitions to make sure they're all up to date. So all of that really helped to frame and guide our changes we did to the bylaw. So that report was initially released in late 2022 with updates. Updates were done, and then the report was released in 2022, and we had opportunities for community input as well. And that really helped guide the revisions to the zoning bylaw through the actual process to update it. A few snapshots here of the open houses we had previously. That was following the initial review report. We had the current zoning there for people to look at and took comments on the bylaw, and that helped to feed into what we did for updating. And we also had a frequently asked question page that we produced as well to help answer some common things people ask about zoning. So following the open house, it certainly took some time to do the various updates to the mapping and also update the draft of the bylaw itself. Those were then provided to municipal and county staff for review. And then while that occurred, there were some further updates we did to the mapping from the Conservation Authority. That was really just to ensure the zoning bylaw reflected the most current information available, including the official plan updates. And then we received some detailed comments from staff on the various sections, and also had a number of working sessions to go through and spend time on different parts of the bylaw. After I was here last, we've continued this detailed review and having some working sessions, and that resulted in the final draft today. So onto the draft bylaw. I just wanted to touch on a few kind of high level things about the bylaw. So it's a similar layout to the current bylaw generally. There's certainly been a lot of updates undertaken. We did some changes to things to add new definitions, really looked at permitted uses for a lot of the zones, looked at things about building location like setback and heights and parking. I looked at updates to new regulations related to secondary units, also bringing in the source water protection information. And that all came from the official plan update. And then there was also a lot of work on the schedules to make them more user-friendly, easy to use. We have color now, so you can find zones better, and it's a lot easier to find labels and things too. So we really tried to get the layout easy to use for everybody. So that's just a couple samples of the new mapping. So we have a easy to navigate grid, so you can find where you want to look at the zoning, and then all the maps are color coded, so it's easy to see what properties are zoned. Some other highlights of the zoning bylaw from the changes to the layout. So we moved the accessory use regulations into each zone. Previously, they were just in a general section on their own. So now if someone's looking at, say, commercial zone, all your accessory use things are right there. So it's a little more user-friendly. We've got a new zone now for mixed use areas, and that is a carry forward from the official plan. We undertook a parking review, did some updates and adjustments for consistency there. Looked at building heights across all the zones, introduced new agricultural zones for the smaller lots. So previously there was just the one agricultural zone, and then there was some guidance in there for smaller lots. So now we have a zone for smaller lots, and then also a zone for what's called rural properties. And that's just based on the soil capability that's in the county official plan. So now the bylaw reflects that as well. A new section for site-specific provisions. And we've really condensed that a lot, took out ones that are duplicates, they're no longer needed. So it's still pages and pages, but it's less pages and pages than it was before. It is still a lot of pages. And then we've also organized it two by zone so that when staff are updating it, they can just go to, well, here's the commercial ones, and we can just update that. So it makes things a little easier to manage later on. We've also introduced some standard holding provisions. And that makes it easier for doing site specifics. If there's archaeology that comes up, then that's going to always be the same number. So it really helps to streamline things there. And then also brought in vendors market regulations, and that was something staff was working on. So we brought that in as part of this. Really, there's no section that we left untouched. We've had lots of new information too. And just a fun anecdote, we were finalizing the bylaw in advance of the release, and it was mentioned to compare our first draft to the current draft to see how many changes we made. And so I just ran a quick compare in Word, and we were all shocked to find that there were over 10,000 changes we made to the document. That does include things like formatting, so it's a little bit less in true changes, but it certainly gives an indication of the magnitude of the project. So that's it for kind of a quick run through of some of the main highlights from the bylaw. In terms of next steps and where we go from here, so as Wayne mentioned, we've got the bylaw available for the public to look at on the website. We're having an open house next week to go through the changes and share that information with the public. And we'll have the zone maps there printed out large scale so people can take a look at their property. Then through the balance of October and into November, we've got community input and a comment period, and then the formal public meeting at council. That's a requirement under the Planning Act. And then we're planning to have through November, December, final revisions to the bylaw, consultation with staff and county staff and the Conservation Authority as well. And then ideally we'll be back for adoption of the bylaw in December. And then if that all goes to plan, we have the notice of adoption and the final bylaw in effect in January. So just in closing, the project's been a major undertaking for everyone involved. And I do want to thank municipal and county staff for the diligence and time and commitment to get to this point. It's a big milestone. Our team's certainly excited to be able to have the draft bylaw available for the public now. And there are further opportunities and methods available for community input, as mentioned through the open house, the statutory meeting, and then of course providing in written comments. And there's the ability to submit comments through the website as well. So Amberly had that all set up, so that's available too. And just we're looking forward to getting input and then finalizing the bylaw to bring back to council. Thanks.
Nick, thank you very much for that report. CBO, do you have any comments to add to that before we open it up for questions?
No, actually, I just want to thank Nick and his team and especially my development services staff for the work that went into this. It was honestly quite a magnitude of undertaking, and we did go through every section line by line on this whole document and took records and input from staff on experiences and what needed to be changed and what needed to be looked at in depth. So it was a very comprehensive review, and I thank staff, and definitely I appreciate especially Miss Emily Weber, who helped me a long ways through this too. So so thanks to everyone who was involved with it, and definitely if council has any questions, please, by all means.
So keeping in mind that the motion reads that we actually do receive this, and the emphasis is on the next steps forward about open house and the public meeting. Are there, you know, if you want to talk really high level about the draft zoning bylaw, please do, but like we're not going to get into specifics or anything like that tonight on the zoning. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you for you, through you, Chair. Nick and Dwayne, you did a great job. This is a huge undertaking. I haven't quite got through the 252 pages, but it is interesting. And I think it's going to really improve that whole process too and streamline it. The only thing I can say is that, you know, and this is more of a comment for a lot of this is such an important document, and the public sometimes doesn't understand how important it is through this comment period, that for zoning and everything. And sometimes then they come up to your desk and they go, I like to build, and you go, well, it's not right zoning. I'm thinking that, you know, some of our documents, like the official plans and some of these documents, you know, we're very passive. Like we sort of put it up our website, but not everyone's on our website. I was wondering, and this is a little bit off, but, you know, can we start to gather people's email and maybe start doing some pushes out there and making sure that, you know, because in Ward 2, most of the people after Thanksgiving have gone away. And unless they're, you know, I try to notify them to get on the website and everything, but it'd be nice to do a push versus just a passive. And I'm not sure if we have the capability, but down the road, I think some of these documents would be very important that we could pass it right to the people that really are going to be impacted.
Would you like to comment on that? If you don't, I will, but that's okay.
Well, I do think that the motion before council lays out the process. Some of this is regulated in terms of public meetings, et cetera. So there are requirements that we're following under legislation with respects to the next steps for public engagement. I I think, to a tremendous amount of work to try and make sure that the public is engaged. There's opportunity to sign up for newsletters. We do a lot of social media interactions. Collecting, if people want to sign up for information, that's the best way. If they're interested in getting updates from us, as opposed to us collecting their information and attempting to guess at what they're interested in.
If I might piggyback on your question, Councillor Stewart, the question is there a proactive communication strategy? I think it would be challenging to say that we will send it out because we will miss someone and that would lead to not a good outcome, but our communications team 7 times 7 ways, and that's always a good strategy. But is there examples from other communities that you have seen that they've undertaken to distribute this notification? Because it's generally hot topic issue. So I'm just looking for your guidance, CBO, if you have any experience in that regard.
And thank you through your mayor. And yes, there's definitely challenges and timing with certain residents' demographics to reach everyone. And we try to utilize our communications portals to make sure we get this out there as much as we can on as many social media platforms and venues possible. There's definitely, I'm not aware of a manifest or something. We have individual emails in certain wards that we can send it out to. I'm not sure, Nick, if your firm has investigated other options, but I mean, that's kind of the best I can answer that one. Is that we just don't have all the opportune resources other than what we have with our legislated process to go out for public comment. I'm cognitive on if we do miss a group, I don't want to come across saying, well, we didn't send it to this group and how come you send it to this group? We try to make it as an even playing field as we can. But yeah, I do understand the concerns with especially seasonal residents. That does come up every once in a while on these types of processes.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our next question. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you through your chair. This might be a little levity. I look at the existing one so frequently. I have 2003-25 burned into my brain. I won't be sad to see it go. I think there's the moral or the story or the lesson to be learned here. It's probably not a great idea to wait 20+ years to update your consolidated comprehensive zoning bylaw. I can only imagine the amount of work that it would take to basically revise something that was 20 years old. And I just want to say thank you for it.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I think it's so timely that this is being done and brought forward now because we've talked more, I think, than ever before about the need for flexibility in housing, especially. And I'm really looking forward to attending the open houses and being able to have some of those in-depth conversations around how this new incredible effort has gone into this and how it will potentially streamline things for folks looking to build or to renovate or to increase housing within our community.
So the motion is that we receive the draft comprehensive zoning bylaws information. A public open house be held October 29th, and further a public meeting be held November 13th in accordance with the Planning Act. All in favor? And that's carried. Nick, thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to call or invite Sherry Leslie up to the table. We need a mover and seconder. The council received the report from Flourish outlining potential development concepts on municipal and private lands to expand affordable and supportive housing options for information purposes, moved by councillors Prenger and Deputy Mayor Clark. Sherry, please.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor. So just to give a quick recap of my report before I pass it over to Graham from Flourish. The municipality passed a housing action plan back in 2022. There was a few actions in that that we're kind of looking at moving forward with. One of those actions was working with our existing community partners that provide housing supports in the community currently, as well as reviewing our municipal lands to see if there's any opportunities within our own properties to support further housing. So I'd like to recognize that over the about past year, we've been working with a number of community partners, including the Women's House serving Bruce and Gray. And we have two representatives here tonight. Marcy Stocking, who's the executive director, and Mary Smith, who is the operations manager with the Women's House. They've been instrumental in our working group, as well as Andy Swan from Community Living. We've also had Tanya Dixon from Bruce County Housing, and Kathy Fraser from Russell Meadows Not-for-Profit Housing has been involved. So we had met several times at the beginning of the year. All organizations are keen to move forward in advancing a new housing project, a new affordable and supportive housing project. But we kind of hit a bit of a roadblock in how do we move forward, and we were really looking for some expertise in this field. So we do thank council for approving some budgets, which would allow us to hire Flourish, who has extensive experience working with Flourish and Indwell on these types of housing projects. And Graham had come up and did a lengthy meeting with our group back in, I believe it was July. And then we also had sent Graham all of the municipal properties that we had initially reviewed as potentially supporting housing. So they did a desktop review of all of those, which it was included in the report. And we also toured around to visit each of those sites to evaluate them as part of their work. And so from there, I'm going to pass it over to Graham, who can give an overview of the report and the recommendations that they've brought forward.
If you would like, is it appropriate that Graham come sit at the table rather than having to stand all the time? Like you're welcome, like we got a camera on you no matter where you stand or sit, so you can't hide, but it's just more comfortable to come and a better microphone too.
Mayor, and thank you for the honor of joining the circle, and I do appreciate the conversation. Look forward to it indeed being a conversation with you as our councillors. I do want to thank you for serving in this role as our civic leaders. I know that you cover the spectrum of decisions from the nuclear industry to our parks, and this really is a responsibility that I know that often is not appreciated, and you do play a key role for our community, so thank you. I've had the privilege of being a part of developing over 1,000 units of supportive and affordable housing over the last few years, particularly through Indwell, in a role that I had as Director of Projects and Development. But out of that experience, we formed a new company called Flourish, which is a nonprofit development services company, particularly working with municipalities, charities, and nonprofits to tackle the housing crisis that sadly is now impacting every community across Ontario. So it's out of that experience that we were very pleased to come alongside Sherry and the community and from Women's House and the other agencies mentioned to say what could be possible here in Kincardine and maybe more broadly impacting and inspiring solutions for Bruce County. So I won't go through all of each page of the report because you have it, but some of the key things that we did look at focusing on. We did that review of the municipal properties that Sherry mentioned. You have the sites in the report there. There are some which are really suitable to housing right away, and there are others that, maybe more longer term would make some sense, but let's just, focus on what can get underway as quickly as possible. There are some key, there's some key priorities that we know are also needed, especially with Women's House. The problem of where do you move out of crisis? How do we move out of shelter, out of transitional housing, into something that's more stable? I won't get into all of the issues because you know them, but we have nowhere to move that's affordable for many, many people in our community. And that's particularly important for supportive housing, which is quite there's quite a shortage of that locally and throughout the county. We also did look at, what is the capacity of local organizations There are not a lot of nonprofit affordable housing organizations in the county, indeed very few, and there's not a lot of capacity in terms of developing new housing in recent years. And so trying to bring some of the expertise that we've had and some of the experience we've been able to build and the exposure we have to conversations across Ontario, it was really important for us to bring that into this conversation. We settled on the 705 Princes Street site as the optimal site within the municipal, those various municipal sites to start with, because it's well situated. Obviously, it's very well situated. It's a great location. It's an unused portion of a parking lot with the rest of the site there with the training center. It would offer a very opportune situation to develop supportive housing, particularly given that doesn't need a lot of, you wouldn't necessarily need a vehicle to live there. And there's a sort of an inspirational project that we have from another project, which was mentioned in the report, Blossom Park Apartments, that Indwell developed in Woodstock in 2019. That project opened with 34 units of supportive housing that we thought could be an inspiration for this one. We didn't spend a lot of time or money designing specific buildings for specific sites, because we know that the conversation needs to start with an idea and then move towards specificity. But you can see in the slide there a photo of the Blossom Park Apartments, and then how we situated it there on that municipal parking lot. When we were moving through each of these projects, we summarized the budget, sort of the concept budget for the housing development. But before I get to that, we also did look at the possibility of some private lands. You're all aware of the site. It's got it on the map there. I think the next slide might be useful. This is obviously a larger site, more on the periphery of the urban boundary at the moment, but well situated for more higher density housing. Again, we took an example project from the range of sites that we worked on with Indwell. This is a project recently opened in St. Thomas. We extrapolated it to say, well, instead of 4 stories, what would 6 stories look like? And we came to 86 units, which is very close to sort of the metrics that the site is site plan approved for. And then we ran this scenario not so much as supportive housing, but as that mixed rental model of some deeply affordable housing or less than $1,000, and housing that would be more at market rates. We know that across the county, but locally as well, a significant number of households really cannot afford more than $1,000 for rent, but there is virtually nothing available in the market for that. And that sort of 60-40 split between market and affordable units is strategic, because that's the best way to optimize the CMHC Affordable Housing Fund program. And I'll come to that in a little bit. It was interesting to hear the presentation about Bruce Power and the 35% of workers locally who are here, but also the significant challenge of attracting new workers. And I think that this issue of housing availability does extend even obviously to our extremely large employers, and so this is a timely conversation. The next slide is this penultimate slide, I think, but we know that there's also sites throughout the municipality that might not be suited for a larger scale multi-residential project, and there might be an interest in smaller, like 4-plexes. Those are on our radar, obviously. There are some advantages to those for sure, and there's some disadvantages when it comes to sort of the large impact on the housing crisis. CMHC's programs for funding don't kick in until 5 units or above. So for 4-plexes, those wouldn't be typically available. That being said, we have heard of the idea of a portfolio of 4-plexes, so you get beyond the individual project in order to get some of those metrics, but we didn't spend a lot of time exploring the various options for that. However, there are some inspirational ideas there to show how a 4-plex type project could fit in within a neighborhood context without being, without overwhelming anything. And those might be more suited to individual sites or individual builders partnering up with a nonprofit to explore how to move forward. So the final slide that I will show there is, we know that affordable housing is a problem that seems to be gripping many communities, and we seem to have like no traction on this. we hear daily from the province, daily from the federal government about the work that they're doing, the goals that they're setting, but we know that it all comes down to what we can do locally in terms of actually moving forward. And we know that, our senior leaders actually follow. They follow us at the local level. And this is where I think the opportunity is for working together. How can we maybe sort of set the pace as nonprofits and the municipality, coming up with the ideas that actually can be put into effect, and then moving back towards Queen's Park or back towards Ottawa to say, okay, we really do need those resources that you have available to come to our municipality, to come to our community and see the results that we're willing to lead and achieve. So we know that momentum's a real thing. When we start moving in a direction that starts to show success, we can translate that to more action. We can translate that into more hopefulness, and we can see people actually move into real housing, which ultimately obviously is our goal. So I will happily turn attention to pro formas and business plans and things like that, because I'm sure you have specific questions rather than me just answering generic questions. But that's basically the presentation, and I do thank you for this opportunity to work with you and with staff.
Anything to add, Sherry, before we open it up for questions?
I believe just under the risk section of the report, I'll just highlight that, typically the municipality hasn't been involved in housing projects. We don't own or operate any housing units. That is a responsibility of the county. And so I think that was acknowledged a few times throughout the report. I do want to flag that as a risk, but I do think that with quite a few municipal lands, I think that we should be creative in looking how we can support in the land aspect, because land is very, very costly these days. And so that can be a huge benefit or opportunity on its own. And I just want to again thank Graham from Flourish, and as well as all the other partners who are involved in moving this forward.
Questions from council? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you through your chair. Thank you very much for coming tonight. When I read the report, like beyond excited. I mean, there's been a lot of talk. You look at something, it looks real. It's based on OpEx elsewhere. I can almost like taste it. So I just have a couple of questions, which would be best case scenario, if planning considerations were done and you went the RFP route and you got that and things worked. What kind of time frame, plus or minus a year, are we looking at between today and actually having people living in such a place, based on your experience elsewhere? That's my first question.
Through you, Chair. Our experience with the projects that we've worked on is that we see people moving into homes within 3 years of the first conversation. That's our goal. We know that there is a planning process. We all sort of gripe about that, but there is reality to that. When people work together, we've seen this in St. Thomas, you can get everything through site plan to building permit in 6 months. There is a physical reality to building something that probably takes 18 months to put all the pieces together. So, best case scenario might be 2 years. Our worst case, if we would think we'd failed if we took 5 years.
Thanks. Second question was, there's also a recommendation in there in the future to look at converting the former W.E. Thompson School itself on the site into affordable, supportive, attainable housing. Just trying to get a visual for me. In your experience, would that involve like an additional story on it that could be done, or are we looking at just a one-story job there?
Through you, Chair, I have not seen any floor plans of the school facility itself, so I can't speak to what's actually physically possible in terms of number of units or the structure or putting an additional story on. But referencing other experiences that we have had, converting church halls, other schools, those types of buildings, they are quite frequently readily convertible. But they often do have things like asbestos or other kinds of materials that do need to be removed. That's all part of the project. And then also trying to figure out what is the right scale of the project or the program model to match the physical facility. So I can't speak specifically to the potential for the school building. But it definitely bears consideration before assuming that it would not be worth converting.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Graham, good presentation. I like the concept. The problem is that, you know, Sherry mentioned it. We really don't have the staff expertise for this. And how do you manage a housing project? You know, one of the things that if we ever did move ahead with this and wanted to move ahead, and if we're donating land to the cause, this one in particular was $1 million, we would have to get the taxpayers to support this. And right now, I don't really feel I have a mandate from the taxpayers. I think everyone's concerned about this. And it's unfortunate because a lot of other things get trickled down to our level. And I think we have the capability, but I'm just not sure if we have the mandate right now. But I really like the concept. I think it's a great concept. Thank you.
You want to put your hand up, Amanda? There we go. Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. I did have one question for clarification, and I know it sounds like we would be donating the land for what was suggested, but who would actually retain ownership of the project in the end to make sure that it remains true to the intent? So, because some of it talked about, you know, who's responsible for the maintenance of the property moving forward to make sure it stays well maintained, and who's receiving those rents that are coming in to make sure that they're managing that property appropriately. So I'd like a little bit of clarification on that, if you don't mind.
So through our discussions with the community housing partners, each of the organizations had identified their capacity to take on a new project, number of units, size of structure. And with the Princess Street proposal or concept design, the Women's House felt that they would be able to, with some additional funding supports, of course, from various levels of government, that they would be looking at or would be interested in taking on a project of that scale. So it wouldn't be under municipal ownership or operations. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to.
I will just add that I think this issue of expertise is a real problem across our province, particularly in the not-for-profit sector. Our assumption in this case for Princess Street was that Women's House would be the owner and the operator, therefore taking responsibility both for the financial liability and the operational responsibility of that building, and for delivering the program within the building. So not putting any of that on the municipality. It's a conversation starter, obviously, the pro forma, this scenario. The idea of how to find the funds, we know is a problem for all municipalities, and where and how to do that without, you know, dramatic levy impacts. I think with the Princess Street site, potential is there to, I mean, you own the site already, so there is a value to it that you've attributed. I'm sure it's on your books as some value. The possibility of severing that, of doing some sort of attributed value to that parcel is obviously part of the equation. CMHC, it used to be called the Co-Investment Program. They've changed the name to the Affordable Housing Program, but most of the parameters are similar. The co-investor, it was very important to have the municipality as a co-investor to show community support. They really scored that or ranked that highly. I think that also there are other scenarios we've seen where a municipality may long-term lease a property or contribute a property with a first right of refusal or other ways to, in a sense, transfer the responsibility and the equity value of land, but without necessarily fully transferring long-term ownership or control. I think there's different scenarios, and obviously your staff would have the best insight into what's right for your municipality. But that's access to land without a significant upfront cost is obviously a key piece of the puzzle for nonprofits, and particularly for this proposal.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd like to focus on the fact that what I read in the report was you could go all in on the 705, if I got the number right, Princess site, but you purposely choose a piece of it and of a scale that lets you get started, and it essentially becomes the catalyst for more. And in a sense, like, a catalyst is, in chemistry terms, a compound that facilitates a reaction but isn't actually consumed in the process. And in this, it looks like they actually chose a piece, a parcel of the property where our contribution doesn't actually cost us anything other than giving the value of the land. And the idea is you create a spark that creates a fire and that grows. So this is not to go back to Victoria Park, but this is like, we're conceptual here. There's a lot of questions I don't think have to come up with the answers for. There's a lot of really smart people out there that have experience in doing this and they're motivated. All we have to do is create a spark.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, thank you so much for your work here. Housing was a big thing that when we were campaigning, that was one of the two things everyone seemed to want to talk about was housing and the affordability of housing. And one of the biggest challenges I think we've faced as a council is spinning our wheels and trying to figure out what the direction was that we wanted to go to make a difference in that element. And this provides a very clear, very actionable step-by-step blueprint that all we have to do is get behind it and push. And I feel like we can make a significant difference in our community and start that snowball rolling.
I think the conversation has just got housing fatigue. It's not that people aren't concerned, that just tired of talking about it. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. Again, thank you for the work that's gone into this. I'm very excited about this concept and moving forward with it. And basically, Councillor Kavanaugh took the words right out of my mouth that most of us campaigned on. One of the pillars of our campaigns was affordable and attainable housing. So I do think there is demand for this from the community. And I'm assuming that most of the community is going to be excited about this as well. So I'm excited about this catalyst and the spark and taking it somewhere. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion the council received the report from Flourish outlining potential development concepts on municipal and private lands to expand affordable and supportive housing options for information purposes. All in favor? And that is carried. Graham, thank you for being here this evening, for being patient with us. We appreciate it. So,
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
so before you leave, you two just sit there, please. The next report is from our CA talking about municipal surplus lands. There is no motion. There is no resolution. It's open for discussion. So it could be short, could be long, could have questions directed at our economic development and our affordable housing consultant, like where do we go from here? So I'll turn it over to our CAO. We received the report and you can direct us on what sort of discussion would you like us to have?
Well, I appreciate that. And I acknowledge that not having a recommendation makes it difficult, and yet it was important to hear council sort of take on the presentation that we've just received from Flourish and through strategic initiatives and economic development. So we have been in tandem working through discussions with respect to this report, at the same time having the conversations about what council initiated last year in consideration of surplus lands. I do feel as though if there is a project that council is going to proceed with, one of the ones that was listed as the high priority makes some good sense to try to move on. And with respect to the other surplus land properties, there's a lot of information we've gathered. There'd still be more information we would need to seek. But if council is interested in moving on that particular project, I think that I'd be looking for a motion from council to say, that's the one, and we want to focus on that and start with that. Because I will just address, and I think we've said it frequently, and maybe this is the 37th time, but with respect to staff capacity to take on multiple projects, when this isn't our general mandate or role, is challenging, but we would like to see something move forward as staff, and would like to see something that we think is achievable, and taking it a step at a time would be helpful. So if there's an interest now or at a future meeting, I think that the consideration of the 705 Princess Street property as a small component to move forward as a project would be reasonable. Thanks.
So just to clarify, did I hear you say that if we identify this as a priority, that perhaps the work on divesting surplus lands might have to wait? Is that the sort of suggestion you're affording, or do they work together? Or should we expect not to receive the reports as quickly as we might have thought we might have, or is that what you're telling us?
I think that there were a number of properties that were included in my report, and a number of staff that were involved in pulling that information together. But this is a particular project that I think fits into the whole conversation that council was aiming to have with respect to disposition of municipal surplus lands. And 705 would still fit into a disposition of land ultimately. So you'd have to sever that property and dispose of it in order for it to move forward in the project plan that.
Yes, Councillor Stewart.
Sorry about this. You through your chair, we're talking 705. 705 has nothing to do with this report. We never classified as a surplus. So
Oh.
I'm a little bit confused why we're going down that trail. We were talking about land that we're gonna surplus, and I'd like to start to move on it. Sorry.
Okay, so points of order about procedural, procedural challenges. I appreciate the comment you've made, and I please, when Jeline is done her report, I would hope that you would offer that comment as part of the open for discussion part, just to guide. I'm expecting a counselor to offer time or intent to craft a motion with the.
Hold on here, point of order. You're starting to get involved in a debate. If you want to get involved in a debate, you should step aside and let the deputy mayor. You're sort of forwarding a debate. And what I thought we were talking about is these properties on this discussion. And 705 is not on this discussion. So I'm a little bit confused.
So I wasn't on the debate. I was offering process rather than wasn't presenting this is what we should do about either.
But you did offer,
excuse me,
you
excuse
did
me.
offer, and you were talking about someone moving forward with a motion. You shouldn't be doing that as a chair.
As council begins the discussion regarding the lands that we need to divest, if we choose to move forward with the discussion regarding coming out of Flourish's report, 705 does become one of the municipal properties that we will consider as surplus for divesting. So though it is not named specifically, it will become part of the conversation. Did you
But
have any
that's not
more?
part of the motion. I'm sorry to tell you. I don't see,
Excuse me,
hold
Bill.
on. I don't
No,
see it.
you hold on.
Okay.
There is no motion.
Well, yeah, so why are we talking about 705? Point of order. We're supposed to be talking about the properties that we have identified as surplus already. And move ahead on that. Then you can make another motion if you want about 705. But right now, we're not talking about the properties.
Okay, thank
Point
you.
of order.
Any further comments about the divesting of the properties that were identified in your report?
Yeah, I would just note that we as staff really saw these as being complementary reports, and that the conversation that council raised with respect to municipal surplus lands really was focused on how could that be used to either sell lands at market value to support potential affordable housing projects somewhere else, or particular properties where housing could be considered to be developed. So these these two conversations were quite linked for us, and you would see that it was part of the review and report that was undertaken by Flourish. And frankly, for us, it is about what is council's wish moving forward, and picking a particular project would be our hope that there is one at a time.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you through you. So I just wanted to reference our official plan. I think I brought it up during the last conversation around surplus land. So part of our official plan suggests that the municipality has a housing first policy for surplus municipal land, specifically the first priority in the decision-making process respecting surplus or potentially surplus property shall be affordable housing development, and that the surplus property be made available for affordable housing purposes at a reduced cost. When I'm looking at this report, what I'm seeing is that some decisions have been made around surplus land, and there's potential next steps that could be made with ones that were previously identified or could be identified. From a perspective of a housing first policy, specifically with affordable housing, I think it makes sense to look at the report we previously received and consider whether that project aligns best with our goals for surplus municipal lands, and whether that potentially supersedes some of the other conversations that we had previously had around surplus land. So I'm not comfortable at this point making a motion. I'd like there to be a little bit more discussion, but that's my perspective on where I think the best use of our time would be going forward.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Part of the act that we all adhere to is that we have surplus land, we have to maximize it. I mean, that's all part of the procedures, you know, and if you're going to reduce it or for affordable housing, I don't think that's quite legal yet. We have to maximize it. And I think we're sort of forgetting that taxpayers need to be included in this. If we sell property, shouldn't we be putting the money back in life cycle? I mean, you know, it's great to talk about affordable housing, but we don't have the staff to do it. We can't manage it. We're not planners. We're not builders. I think, you know, it's a concept that really works quite nicely, but it's not a practical concept for us. If we sell property that is owned by the taxpayers, I think we should put the proceeds at a maximum back into life cycle where it belongs. It's the taxpayers' money, not our money to play around with. It's the taxpayers' money.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I was preparing for the meeting. I didn't think that these two agenda items would get, well, we'd get into this cluster. So here's this the way I'm trying to help. So the agenda item we're on now, really, the report is a status report on action, on progress made to execute the actions that council directed previously around some surplus lands. That's all it is. That's what I see it as. And many of these lands, I think all of them in here, in that assessment of all municipal owned property, weren't flagged as ones that being suitable for affordable housing based on things like size and location. I think like it's maybe a little, might have been better if there was a motion or a resolution just to receive this report and we could move on. I don't see why they this needs to be as complicated as it is, because to me they're two separate things, and I think we're losing the big picture in the minutia. So if there is no resolution, when do we move on from this one? We just move on now when questions are done or discussion? Thank you for the report.
It's going to afford opportunity. If anybody
Okay.
had something to say, we weren't going to go around the table 7 times. Not at all. Councillor Steinhoff, Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just trying to clarify in my mind, because with the surplus lands for starters, one of the reasons why I think they are somewhat related is one of the items on our surplus land actually shows up in the list from the report. I believe King Carden Ave, which has some potential for affordable housing and building units. So if we were to sell it without considering what we could do with it, I think it's something that we have to consider. So to me, I do understand to a certain extent why they're related. I'm not trying to belabor this meeting, but I also think we also just had a very supportive conversation about some of the things we want to look at. And so it might not be for this meeting because we need more time, but I do think that we as a group need to look at what next steps we want to take in regards to the report that we received. So perhaps we just table that, receive this report and have another report come back for the integration between the two. Those are my thoughts.
Sorry, who were you pointing at?
Apologies, I just saw our expert's hand up. And
Oh,
I
Graham?
wasn't sure if he had something to add to the conversation. Well, he's here.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair, if you'd be interested, I could offer a few suggestions maybe to this situation that you're discussing about the surplus lands. I'm a taxpayer too, so I fully value the attention to that detail. I think that there could be an interesting opportunity to, I mean, we looked at these municipal sites in the report. One of them is I think maybe both of them are there. We didn't assess either of them as like optimal for the supportive housing, particularly to meet the needs for Women's House. That being said, there is true value in both of these sites or in all of these sites for affordable housing, and particularly to meet the housing crisis. 50% of Canada's median income is $91,000. Most households with incomes less than that can't actually afford housing. So we're not talking about solely folks on social assistance or many other people. So the need to create affordable housing is much beyond those with the lowest incomes. And I think that these particular sites, particularly if I look at the Tiverton one, I would like to extrapolate the experience we're suggesting for the private market site in the report. That scenario of 60% market-based housing and 40% affordable housing could be used to assess the value of some of these other sites before you decide to divest them to simply gain cash equity to invest back into another site. I haven't done that kind of study, but it wouldn't necessarily take too long to help inform your decision if that was something that you would be interested in doing. Because I think that the CMHC constantly is changing their programs, but they're always trying to drive projects towards getting the market, so-called market housing, to offset the value or improve the affordability of the affordable housing. And we know that there really is a need for all kinds of rental housing in the municipality. So if some of these lands could be used for that breadth of development, or should say developing the breadth of affordability, which includes market, I think that's worth looking at. Not to preclude that you shouldn't sell in the end, but it might be worth just considering in a way that we didn't do within our current report.
Okay, thank you. And with those comments, I'm going to offer the opportunity for council just to sit and digest this for a while, like for a couple of weeks or more. And when one of you or staff has a great motion to direct this in the next appropriate steps forward, then that will be the motion that council begins to look at as we debate our path forward. Okay? Graham, Cherry, thanks for spending more time with us. We appreciate it. I want to finish one more resolution and then we'll take a break, okay? Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund Parks Facilities. We need a mover and seconder. The council to approve a submission to the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund as outlined herein, including the selection of the Tiverton Sports Center Ice Rink Improvements Project moved by Councillors Kavanaugh and Deputy Mayor Clark. Is there any discussion? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. I guess we don't have, oh, you're here. One of the things I'm interested in is the building's about 40 years old, I believe, built in the mid-80s and everything else. The ice rink, you're talking about redoing the tubing and redoing the surface of the ice rink. When was the last time that was done? Was that only done when we built the building?
Thank you, and through you. The building's 35 years old, and we had a very quick preliminary assessment done by our conditions company that works on the building. Out of the 13 items that they looked at within the building that for the purposes of running an ice plant, only 3 were identified as good. The rest were in fair to poor. So all of them, the ones that were good have been since replaced since the building was built. Everything else is original to the building, which is 35 years old.
So if we decide to do this, and I like the idea and the ice plant upgrade and the board upgrade and the rink upgrade, is the building going to last another 40 years? I guess that's one of the points. Because there's no point, if the building's only gonna last another 10 years, we really should consider something else. But if we think the building's pretty sound, I think this kind of investment's a great idea because we can keep the building for another 35, 40 years and just upgrade some of the equipment and some of the features. So that's assured that this building's gonna stand for another 40 years from the assessment?
Through you, I have, Mr. Mayor, I have recognized within the report that the timing of this grant application really is not in alignment with our planning processes. And so in response to your question, how long would the facility stand? You know, a floor, you can usually get 40 to 45 years out of a floor. It makes no sense to replace our dasher boards, which are in dire need of replacement, without doing the floor at the same time. So yes, you will probably, unless there's an act of God that happens to that building, probably be standing there for another 35, 40 years. Don't quote me on that, but you know, there's things that can definitely go wrong. So there is caution in applying for this grant application, again, because we don't have the full picture of the future of our recreation world as it pertains to facilities, but we don't know how often these grant applications do come along, and we would probably be amiss by not applying at this point.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm really happy to see that we're applying to both grant streams. I think this is really important, and I appreciate the time and energy that went into it. I know I've had a number of folks involved with hockey speak to me over some of the improvements they had been hoping to see, and we do have a lot of kids involved in the sport. I know my own son uses the Tiverton Arena, so I do appreciate the time and energy that went into this because infrastructure is so expensive and it's so important that we can keep these community-based sports facilities open, especially with the cost of replacement. So I'm very happy with what staff's put together here. Thanks.
All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. 5-minute bio break. Thank you. So welcome back to session. I'm going to recuse myself as I have a pecuniary interest. Our deputy mayor is leading this next article.
7.2 motions. S357. Actually, can you read that, please?
Whereas Section 357 or 358 of the Municipal Act provides a process for property owners to apply for a cancellation, reduction, and refund of taxes under specific circumstances, including but not limited to a change in the use of a property, demolition or fire, the property being substantially unusable for a period of at least 3 months, or a gross or manifest error in the preparation of the assessment roll. And whereas, in the opinion of staff, the 15 write-offs met with the criteria set out in the Municipal Act, and whereas the total of the applications amount to $20,945 and 86 cents, with the municipal share being $9,285.12. Now therefore be it resolved that council approve the applications as provided.
Thanks. Do we have a mover? Councillor Blackwell and a seconder, Councillor Kavanaugh. Any discussion? Councillor Stewart.
Just a quick one. I'd like to thank Roxana for getting back to me in a timely fashion on 09 and 011, because I didn't have a clue went on. She explained it perfectly, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. The staff usually get back in a timely fashion. Anyone else? Can we call a vote then? All in favor? That passes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, Community Investment Grant, we need a mover and seconder. Whereas policy LS01 Community Investment Grant Policy sets out that requests for support for new projects only may be considered outside of the standard intake processes, with applications to be submitted for review by the Community Investment Grant Evaluation Team, who will make a recommendation to council. Whereas the Bruce County Classic Team, 4-H, has submitted a 2024 Community Investment Grant application. And whereas funds remain in the Community Investment Grant budget, whereas the evaluation team has reviewed the application and recommended a grant of $500 to be approved. Now therefore be it resolved that the council approve a 2024 Community Investment Grant of $500 to the Bruce County Classic Team, 4-H. Moved by Councillors Prenger and Steinoff Gray. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Consent agenda. These are listed on considered routine or enacted in one motion, unless you would like to discuss about one either tonight or for future consideration. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Through you, Chair. 8.1AB, Corporate Services Update. I'd just like to maybe pull number 4, new water meter implementation. Seems that we're going to have to hire some additional staff because we're not quite working 2 systems. I'm not sure how that's going to impact our budget. We have a budget here, it's capital project of $700,000, and it just says additional contract staff resources will be required in order to complete the next phase of this project due to the time involved in the implementation and operation of maintaining 2 different systems. I'm not sure if that was captured in the original capital budget of 700,000. So maybe we'll just remove that and maybe ask Mark to come back to us and just give us a little report.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it's going to.
All right. Just identified that one. Okay. Anything else? All right. We need a mover and seconder that council approve the recommendations obtained in the consent agenda except for 8.1AB. Number 4. And direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions moved by Councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Councillor Hinchberger. All in favor? And that's carried. General announcements. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through Chair. Will be a Remembrance Day exhibit at the Walker House Museum from November 1st to 16th titled The Walker House Remembers. The exhibit will feature a display dedicated to Charlie Mann that's loaned from the municipality of Kincardine, as well as artifacts from the Walker House Museum's collection. that speak to the stories and experiences of those who served in World Wars I and II. The Lions Club is also contributing to the event. As part of this exhibit, there's going to be a speaker event on Saturday, November the 9th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. There'll be a couple of speakers. One presentation is entitled Almost Lost, Finding the Lampman Family Treasure Trove, and the second is World War II, Malcolm Furniture and the Mosquito. That would be a plane, by the way. Entrance to the exhibit and the speaker event is available to the public by donation. To reserve a seat for the speaker event, you can email the Walker House Museum at gmail.com, or there is a phone number for them.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you. We won't have another meeting before Halloween, so just wishing everyone a fun and safe Halloween. Safety first. Think of that, all the things you want to consider that day or evening, and because it's my favorite holiday.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I'll just want to say I'm looking forward to Saturday night. I'll let the deputy mayor talk about the details. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'm also looking forward to Halloween, not quite as much as my son, because it's his birthday. I wanted to share that this coming weekend is the Downtown Spooktacular, which is always a wonderful event that's happening from 10 till noon. In the afternoon, there is a ghost event for children at the Walker House. And on Sunday, there's a spooky trail walk. So if you're getting in the mood for Halloween, there's lots and lots to do. Lastly, I'd also like to acknowledge that the Kincardine Legion is once again working with our operations staff to host a No Stone Left Alone ceremony in the Kincardine Cemetery, where this year it will be high school students attending and placing a stone, or a poppy, sorry, on each of the headstones of veterans from our community to ensure that they are also recognized on Remembrance Day. So that's happening on November the 8th.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you. I am dressing up for Halloween, but it is not my favorite holiday. Not that that's important. All I'm going to say is that I'm looking forward to Saturday, and I'll leave the rest with my fellow Councillor Clark.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
No, thank you very much. Through the chair, I too will be downtown Saturday morning from 2 to 10 in costume, trick or treating, visiting all 10 to 12. Sorry. No, I just want them to come late so I get all the candy. No, from 10 to 12, trick or treating on all the local businesses on Queen Street. I also want to give a shout out to my fellow councillor, Councillor Blackwell, who will be appearing on November 5th online on her panel entitled Building Positive Connections Online. And she's one of several prominent elected representatives who is going to be discussing all the ways they can use the online medium to engage with others in a positive way.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I also am looking forward to hearing Councillor Blackwell. It'll be the night of the US election, so I'll be flipping between. This Saturday is the Afro-Caribbean Youth Awards. So it is really an opportunity for the community on a whole to come out. It's an evening of really culture, bringing everyone together, and just having an evening of celebration. So I look forward to seeing many of you there, and hopefully to seeing many of the residents in the municipality there.
CAO announcements.
Okay. All right. Just a reminder that the Tiverton Water EA, the environmental assessment public consultation, is taking place on October 30th in Underwood. So there are a few different times, 3 to 5 and 6 to 8, with a presentation at 4 p.m. and at 7 p.m. So just 2 different time slots, presentation at each one of those, but it is at the Underwood Community Center.
Okay, we need a mover and seconder that council move into closed session pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purposes of considering closed session minutes dated October 9, labor relations or employee negotiations, particularly with firefighters, and further that council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Moved by councillors Deputy Mayor and Councillor Black.